Welcome to the Scandinavian Mind podcast, where every week we talk about how technology is transforming the creative industries. Today on the program, what is uglycore and why does it matter? This week we talk about uglycore, a new aesthetic for fashion and culture that has gone viral on TikTok and Instagram. We talk about how the trend grew in Generation C with sub-trends like NASCAR, weird girl aesthetic and more. We'll look at some Nordic examples and talk about how it affects the fashion industry at large. I'm Konrad Olsson, Editor-in-Chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind, and I'm here with my colleagues Roland Philippe Kretzschmar, Editor-at-Large, and our junior editor Erik Sedin. How are you guys?
Bonjour.
We're good.
Good morning from Paris. From Roland is in Paris. What's going on?
It's a lot of meetings at work. We have our global headquarters here. Then I've also looked at endless amount of art. It's Art Basel week.
Did you schedule these business meetings just to go to Art Basel? Admit it.
No,
Admit it.
No, actually, this was a coincidence. I was planning to schedule a business meeting, but this was a coincidence that I was invited for Global E-commerce Summit the same week. Fantastic! So I'm super excited.
All right, so have a look at Roland's Instagram for more reports on that. Also, it's quite an international week here at Scandinavian Mind. Erik, we've both been in Amsterdam on two different reasons, but you came back from there yesterday.
Yeah, I did. It was a fast visit. I was there for one day. I was actually in Breda, which is it's funny. I landed in Amsterdam, and then my driver picked me up, and we drove for 1.5 hours, and I basically saw the whole of the Netherlands. It's such a small country. So I went to the south of the Netherlands, and it was actually quite of a secret. I was there with Apple. They had to show me something. And the thing is, I literally can't say what it was because they took my phone before we went there. It was all very secret. It was all very, I literally can't tell you.
So when can you tell us?
There will be a story on your favorite news site in the next coming week or so.
We'll get back. We tried to have an editorial meeting for this podcast, but you were no-show due to Apple stealing all your equipment.
Yeah, it was Fort Knox.
Well, that's what happens with the big technology companies when they're launching new products. Anyways, we're going to dive right into this week's topic, and we're going to talk about something that is immensely popular out there on social media. We're talking about the new trend called uglycore. It's a hashtag that's raking up 5-6 billion views on TikTok. We're going to try to unpack what this is, how it has developed. But maybe let's give it a try with a definition here. Roland, maybe you can start with that.
Sure. I think in order to define uglycore, we need to go back a couple of years and look at the emergence of normcore. Remember normcore? So yeah, the normcore trend kind of emerged in the 10 years ago. It was kind of this anti-fashion desire to be liberated from the rigidity of luxury fashion and return to basics. And normcore was characterized by a style that is kind of nondescript, simple. It reinvented the ugly aesthetic and made it
very beige.
Again,
everything is beige.
Yeah, mom jeans, dad sneakers. So what was kind of traditionally dull and cool was recontextualized and then embraced by youth. And I think this we can see in every generation, right? And this kind of form of ugliness. How could you say, intellectually speaking, at least, has kind of been characterized by self-expression, reinvention, that is kind of an anti-trend, right? So what is considered to be ugly is then kind of appropriated as the coolest,
the
latest,
new cool, yeah.
The new cool, right? And I think that at its core, this trend exemplifies a sense of irony. So, it's an attempt to express, as I said, anti-fashion sentiments by going against existing trends, and then it emerges as a trend in itself. So it's very meta.
Just a note on that before we go on with what uglycore is. But when we started, doing research about this episode and we're talking about normcore, I had sort of forgotten about that term. And I remember we came very vividly, and I was editor of a fashion magazine then, and we did these, elaborate stories with this sort of beige kind of chino aesthetic. But when I scroll down the major e-commerce sites today, it's fascinating how strong a grip this has on culture. I feel like
Yes.
this is like the normal. The norm core has become norm. It's the sort of baseline for fashion right now, with these sort of oversized pants, kind of New Balance type sneakers, and these kind of like beige, very basic colors, and that's like it's everywhere.
Yeah, and I think there is, this is going to be interesting, since Erik, you are Gen Z member of this podcast. It's like if I would wear these, these kind of grayish New Balance sneakers and, I don't know, a college sweater and oversized chinos, as you say, Konrad, I would just look like, this kind of dad that I am, the middle-aged dad that I am,
Exactly,
right?
it's a fine line. Plus 40, you can't do it.
No, you can't do it. But Erik, I mean, if you're part of your generation, at least, it can look cool, right? But let's get back to that in a second. I just want to also add to the ugly core trend that I think there's a big distinction between normcore and ugly core, and that ugly core in itself, and this is I think evident when you look at the hashtag on TikTok or Instagram or elsewhere, that it takes it to the next level. It basically goes beyond the grayish and the dad sneakers to something quite undefinable, to be honest. It's like anything that you can imagine is ugly is part of the ugly core trend. I mean, I'm in Paris recording this. You see literally on the streets people looking like really weird. If you ask me, they look like shit, but they also look very trendy, very kind of 2022, right? And I think we already saw the emergence of this with Crocs like a decade ago, and Crocs is still super hot. And there are many other examples. Look at Balenciaga the last couple of seasons. It is weird, it is ugly, but it is also on point, super trendy, right? I think we also, to unbox this ugly core trend, we have to look at the relevance of social media informing these trends, and especially TikTok.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, and that I think is the angle here that I want to understand, because I think there is a kind of thesis around this where TikTok and social media actually steers aesthetics more than maybe we have admitted previously. But before we get to there, I just want to stick on this definition a little bit and look at some of the sort of offshoots there is, because if normcore was like a kind of non-aesthetic, very bland, a sort of a competition in being as bland as you could be, I feel like ugly core is kind of in the opposite end of the spectrum. It, as you said, it's really expressive. Can you say that? It's really, like, to me, it's like mix all kinds of patterns, styles, colors, anything that gives a strong expression. And I mentioned on the top of the program, there's something called weird girl aesthetic. For instance, famous supermodel Bella Hadid has been captured with this style, which is also kind of a version of ugly core. Obviously, she wears super luxurious clothes because she's one of the biggest supermodels on earth.
Yeah, but that's the point, Konrad.
Yeah.
That what normcore started as well, like it looked very bland, grayish, and normal, but some of the clothes were really, really expensive, and the same with ugly core. I mean, it looks like you literally just picked up some random items from the street even, but then look at the Balenciaga shoes, like the homeless shoe that was launched like a year ago, like $2,000 or something. So yeah, it's
And also, just to add on that, I think what you said there, it's called a homeless shoe, and I think it's kind of a slippery slope when people with a lot of money, with a lot of status and a lot of power chooses, oh, this is ugly, and I'm making fun of it now. I think sometimes it can be appropriated from some poorer culture. The people, they don't think it's ugly; it's their culture. I remember, for example, that Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, when they were together a couple of years ago, I remember Kim did like a photo shoot with an old like Kodak camera in like an old house, like a rundown house, and they were like eating cereal out of a cereal bowl. And yeah, look at this like poor aesthetic, and it looked great. Like that's what she thought. I didn't really care for it so much. But a lot of people in the comments were like, "Oh, you're gonna use poor aesthetics because it's gonna match your Instagram feed now." So even though you're talking about like with Bella Hadid, she has a lot of money. She can buy all these, like, even though it's ugly and it's weird girl, it's still a lot of money. And that's why I just wanted to say that I think it's kind of a slippery slope when people at the top of the food chain in fashion and stuff choose, oh, that's ugly, and now it's in, and now it's trendy, even though.
Erik, I thought we canceled Kanye West, and you still mentioned him every episode. We mentioned.
Yeah, really, I might have to cut that out.
No, keep it in. Well, I just wanted to, on that note, I mean, that's been happening in the fashion industry since like the beginning of fashion industry, the sort of appropriation of different styles, different cultures, and many times maybe cultures that don't have the same, well, definitely can't afford the luxury offshoots that we are talking about here. But I think, like, going back to Uglicore, to me, it sounds like, I mean, the Balenciaga shoe, when they launched the big Triple S sneaker, that's got to be like 10 years ago now as well. This big, ugly, kind of bastardization of kind of the New Balance dad sneaker. I mean, that has dominated culture for the past decade. But to me, what Uglicore, the way I've understand it, when I go into TikTok, when I watch the hashtag as a kind of plus 40 man, what I see is a lot of experimentation that is not about picking up designer items. I mean, I saw one girl making a handbag out of one of those plastic zippers that you get on the airport. That's where she sort of stashed her wallet and phone, right? And it's about sort of grabbing things, all over the place that you have around you. And to me, it's like, it's very 90s to me. It's very like back to some kind of grunge thing where you just, you were supposed to look like you picked up whatever was on the bottom of the pile in the laundry room.
Yeah, it's very cyclical. I mean, if you look at the grunge trend that emerged straight after the 1980s, right, when you had like the richest decade in history of Earth, right, and then there was this big financial crisis at the end of the 80s, and then grunge kind of emerged afterwards. And I see it's interesting. Uglicore actually emerges when we have recession, inflation, war in the Ukraine, and there's a lot of macro factors that that are in play here. But I would like to add another element which did not exist in the early 1990s with grunge, is algorithms. So my own thesis here is that the Uglicore trend has actually emerged as from TikTok or from other social platforms as a way to actually gain likes. So, being on TikTok with your dad's sneakers and chinos and college sweater is not going to give you likes because it doesn't stand out. And the more you stand out, the more you express yourself, the more you are kind of unique on TikTok, the more attention you will get in the feed. So I think this is perhaps one of the first kind of algorithm formed fashion trends.
That's super interesting. I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, we know from human psychology that we tend to overlook everything that we've seen before and know before, whereas we remember, and what captures our attention is the anomalies. The thing that stands out, that's something that we haven't seen before. And this is just makes total sense when you frame it like that, because on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, you have milliseconds before you can just swipe to the next video. So it kind of makes sense. So does that mean that this trend is here to stay? It's a rabbit hole. It's a vortex of ugly aesthetics that's just gonna increase in strength over the next few decades. What do you think?
I'm gonna contradict myself because you can, equally see all these accounts and influencers these monochromatic, super minimalistic clothes and styles, and so everything is trendy at the moment. There's nothing that is kind of standing out. I mean, yes, Uglicore maybe is currently standing out in the last couple of months as kind of being the kind of trend that is being called on by the major influencers. But actually, if you're gonna be honest, everything is trendy at the moment. So yeah, I don't know. It's. I mean, your question was, is this kind of gonna stick? Yes, I think this is going to stick as one subcultural kind of stream. but then you're gonna have like hundreds of other subcultural streams in the same time. However, I think if we look back, let's say 10 years from now, like what defined 2022, then uglicore is gonna stand out.
Right. Well, let's look at some examples, because maybe on that note, different sort of sub trends that comes out of this. Erik, you've been scouring TikTok and trying to research for this episode. What have you picked up?
Yeah, it's something I've seen pop up on my For You page on TikTok for a couple of weeks now. It's this girl. She goes to NASCAR events in the US, and she shoots kind of like a really
The race car, the real race car event.
Yeah, like the NASCAR event. Like I can't really explain the sport. There's a car going in circles. People probably should Google it. Anyway, she goes there and she shoots like really like cool like street style shots with her iPhone on slow mo of like NASCAR fans pulling up to the event. So there's really like sexy slow motion shots of just a lot of tribals, headscarves, baggy shorts, but really tight tank tops. Athletic, really like fast sunglasses. So
this
kind
sounds
of like
awesome.
a Hulk Hogan vibes, but in all kinds of shapes. And I guess a lot of people, unless you're part of that culture and you really like that aesthetic, you would call it ugly. Because it's kind of like trashy and it's kind of ugly and it's kind of they're kind of like smoking cigarettes and they're really roughed up. And but this girl that's on it, she's like very fashion and style conscious, and she shoots these guys, and then she asks the people in the comments to rate them. And for me, I thought it was just at first like what I was talking about before. Is it about making fun of other cultures and then calling it ugly? But people are saying like, oh, what's the ID on the jeans shorts? Those really baggy ones that go like almost down to the ankles. Oh, I love his tank top with the wolf howling at the moon. That kind of stuff. So this is one way of thinking that I thought was interesting, is that NASCAR aesthetics, I don't think anyone has ever really looked at it. But as we were saying before, what is something that we haven't seen before? Maybe if this reaches Europe, in the US, they have NASCAR events and they dress like Hulk Hogan. They're giving off this like a bit trashy, like Trailer Park Boys vibes. Maybe we can take that. So,
Erik,
yeah,
I think we should send you to a speedway event here in Sweden, or maybe Mantorp.
Yeah,
you
like sounds like you're sold.
Yeah, we're starting something here.
You're into this.
We should do this. We have TikTok now. Scandinavian Minds on TikTok, doing amazing numbers on there. We should go to speedway events, go crazy and go viral there. Start a trend.
Yes. But I think just to clarify for the listeners, we're not actually talking about the race gear, kind of the race gear that you use as a driver, right? So we're talking about the visitors. Because exactly. If you look at NASCAR or Formula One or motorsports in general, that has been trendy. I mean, since its emergence like 100 years ago, right?
Of course.
Because the drivers are sexy and cool and it's very masculine and adrenaline so that style has always been kind of in trend, right? But you're actually talking about the fans.
This is more of a Walmart aesthetic. It's not so masculine aesthetic. No, but actually I was talking about this. I don't know if this connects to what I've noticed on TikTok about this NASCAR trend, but during the recent fashion weeks, and just if you live in Stockholm, probably anywhere else in the world, you've seen this fall a lot of race jackets. Some of them are vintage and some of them are made by like Diesel and Dior. Could also come back to what we were talking about. In the 90s, it was quite big to have those. So, having a race jacket with like the Marlboro patch on it and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if that's aesthetically pleasing, if that's like fashionable really, but it's different.
I had one from Diesel in the 90s in leather.
Oh, nice. You still have that one? That's probably worth a lot of money.
I don't. I could sell it for a big money.
Yeah.
What about you, Konrad? You're very quiet here. What do you feel about the normcore, uglycore trend? Is this part of your kind of aesthetic preference?
Well, it's not part of my personal aesthetic reference at all. I'm definitely the boomer in the room, and to me, when the Triple S shoe came with Balenciaga, that sort of flew over my head as well. Even though I was an editor of a fashion magazine, so I think I've been following this really as an observer, and we have, looking back at what's happened the past sort of decade, we can look at Nordic fashion as well. Obviously, I think Acne Studios are our biggest and most famous, high fashion brand from the Nordics. They've been doing a lot of iterations in their style and feel like every season is something new and really something surprising, and they've tried to push the limits. We have another example that I wanted to bring up, the Swedish designer Beate Karlsson of Avi. How do you pronounce the name of the brand? AV perhaps. Sorry about that. But she's been famous for doing fashion that's kind of sort of both sculptural and wearable-ish at the same time. She made famous by her enormous shoes that looks like something out of a children's book or something. Enormous, something mixed between like a clown shoe and something out of a, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, or something even more expressive. And for the last show that they did in Milan, I think it was, she had models sent out on runways, all of them falling down uh, within seconds of entering the runway. So I think this is another example of a designer that works with an aesthetic that is meant to be provocative, eye-catching, an experience really when you look at it from, at least from a distance. I don't know, these things are wearable. She gets a lot of attention as kind of one of the most interesting creatives right now. But these are some reflections that I had. I mean, one of the models also stepped out on the runway with a sort of a wristwatch type necklace, and those types of seemingly contradictory aesthetically details, and she just places them in new contexts all the time.
Yeah, I have to do some more research on that. To be honest, I haven't really followed that. I'm just thinking back to these kind of algorithms defining what's hot or not. What do you guys think about the future? I mean, as we all know, I mean, there are all these kind of subcultural trends ongoing at the same time, and depending on which kind of bubble you're in, I mean, the algorithms define kind of what you see and what kind of comes on your on your feed, etc. But do you think that this will continue to define trends more than, let's say, again, since I'm in Paris, like what the designers that are maybe based in Paris or New York or Milan are dictating? What do you guys think?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and who's in charge of the algorithm? Is it the artists, or is it the influencers? Who's really pulling the strings here? I'm not sure, but I didn't say it before, but speaking of uglicore, the people that I think of from a Scandinavian perspective is the Sad Boys and Young Lean. They've been wearing some questionable stuff for like 10 years now, and they were made fun of. They were a subculture, but now they're like not only mainstream artists, but as the way they dress also made sense. So I don't know, maybe they pushed the algorithm, maybe they fed the algorithm for years. It turned out to be so different that it then got into people's minds.
Well, I think one other way to look at this, I mean, the sort of common strategy, if you were going to grow on Instagram, even like a few years ago, was to be very consistent. So to find your style and kind of find your style tribe and serve that style, and that was like a go kind of subcultural. And then we had this sort of emergence of, if you were into a certain type of interior, there was a community for that. If you were into sort of street style, or if you were into tailoring and the sort of pitti uomo Italian style, you were in that kind of echo chamber. But it feels like the new, more fast-paced algorithm is kind of breaking that up. And one kind of take on this is that fashion becomes more and more like entertainment, and that is something that informs the way we dress. So
but listen, I think, Konrad, I like your reference to, for example, tailoring. So if you look at pitti uomo, I mean, the peacocks, I mean, those guys that are on your feed during pitti uomo, I mean, in my personal opinion, they don't look. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, but that is part of the peacock kind of subculture, right? That you dress to impress, and you exaggerate a lot to stand out, both in colors, in shape, and form, etc. Right? But I think there's a similarity to ugly core actually, that the peacocks at Pitti Uomo that stand out on your Instagram feed, they stand out for the same reasons as you would stand out on TikTok with ugly core.
Right. No, I get it totally. Yeah. And I think lastly, before we wrap up, one other way to look at this, and I've been talking about this for a couple of years, trying to help people, look how to view the evolution of fashion. And one way to look at it is you have the kind of utility and experiential as two different ways of looking where fashion is going. So utility meaning we all need to wear clothes, they need to function in our everyday life. They need to function outdoors when we're doing things. That's one part of it. The other part is the experiential part that's been growing and growing and growing the past at least couple of decades. And this ugly core trend is the last iteration of that, driven by these algorithms, is that we're thirsting for new experiences all the time. We want to be entertained. We want our dopamine levels to be jacked up at any given moment. So that doesn't mean that the sort of utility part of fashion is going away. It lives there. I think we all, adhere to certain type of style tribes, and usually they are ingrained in our identity at perhaps an early age, maybe between 20s and 30s, and that kind of sticks. But on top of that, we are experiencing fashion more like kind of like entertainment, what's happening in culture. And we can do at least a couple of seasons of this podcast talking about how fashion is ingrained in culture. And that probably goes back to Balenciaga and Kanye again. But maybe that's a way to wrap this up, this analysis.
I think you're making interesting reflections. I would actually push it that your style is defined during your teenage years a lot. So this is why I'm reflecting on this also with algorithm kind of defining what are the trends. So if you are a teenager growing up in 2022, you are going to be shaped for life on your aesthetics, right? So I think that is going to be interesting just to watch and see. When we do the 13th season of Scandinavian Mind Weekly, we can reflect back on this and see if the ugly core trend has stuck or not. One more thing, actually, guys. This is, in a way, whether it's conscious or not, a statement against sustainability.
Well, I was going to get to that, but I feel like maybe that's an entirely different episode of this. But for sure, what happens when we use clothes as entertainment? I guess you could see there are positive things because you see a lot of reuse, a lot of secondhand, a lot of vintage stuff happening when people are creating the kind of ugly core looks. But on the other hand, if people start using, which they do, we know that with fast fashion, using clothes as entertainment is a new thing every week. That's detrimental to the planet. On the third hand, if we see this growing in digital context, which we've been covering before, if we place fashion in kind of gaming worlds and so forth, and put the need for weird aesthetics on those platforms, maybe we don't put too much pressure on the planet with producing new stuff. So there are many ways to look at this topic. Anyway, I think it's been super interesting talking about it. I'm super happy that we dove into it. And
maybe we could do a follow-up, because I'm actually thinking as we speak now, there's another window we can open. It's the aesthetics of avatars. So if I look at Fortnite or Decentraland or Sandbox and how you look as an avatar, it's actually very much connected to the ugly core trend.
I love that. Okay, let that be our follow-up then. Ugly core in the metaverse. That will be the name of that episode. Anyways, this has been a great episode. I just want to round up with some observations from our feed on scandinavianmind.com. But before that, I just want to talk to you guys. What are you looking forward to in the week to come?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to for our platform wise. We sent our contributor Oliver Dale to Riga the other week, and he's gonna write a story about Fashion Week in Riga and how can the Baltic Fashion Weeks, how can they match up to the Scandinavian ones, and why are so few people there? So as always, he has a sharp pen. He has a great pen, so it'd be really interesting to read about that.
I'm actually going to plug my other podcast, Cons.
Oh, yeah.
I did a recent episode with Marina Chupchenko. She's been a gallery owner for 30 years. Super interesting episode if you're curious about the mechanisms of the art industry.
Yeah, definitely worth a listen. And just to end with, last week's episode was about the situation in Iran. Obviously, this is a topic that is affecting all of us and is part of our daily news feed. And I just want to mention that we did do a follow-up on that, our Iran survey, where we lifted 3 more voices on this topic. We had the investor Susanna Jaffe, which you have been interviewing before, Roland. She has Iranian heritage, so she talks about it. Also, the writer Negar Naseh, which has a new novel out that's about the Iranian Revolution from '79. Kind of a little bit of a macabre timing for her novel, but she gives her perspective. And also Roshi Hoss, the co-founder of the PR firm Hoss Agency. So have a look at that. It was put together by Megha Prakash and you, Erik. All right, this has been the Scandinavian Mind podcast. Don't forget to follow us on our social feeds. We are now on TikTok, as Erik mentioned. Booming there, right? We're booming.
Yeah, no boomers allowed. We're still booming.
Okay. And don't forget to sign up to our newsletter not to miss out on any content and upcoming talks and events. Visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletter. Guys, until next week, have a good weekend.
Bye.
See ya.